When my father died, they buried him beside the vines he loved more than sleep. I remember the smell that morning, soil, oak, and crushed grapes turning to rot under the August sun. The land stretched out like a green sea, endless rows of Cabernet and Syrah, each leaf trembling in the wind like a secret it couldn't hold. That vineyard was supposed to be mine, not by entitlement but by rhythm. I'd grown up there, barefoot in the summers, pruning in the winters, learning how a single mistake in watering could echo for a whole season. My father used to say, "The vine remembers everything." I didn't realize people remembered less. 2 weeks after the funeral, the papers arrived. My cousin Daniel came with them, wearing a black suit too sharp for our dusty valley. He looked like someone who'd stepped out of a city boardroom and into a photograph he didn't belong in. "It's all settled," he said, sliding the documents across the table. "Dad handled it before Uncle passed. You're taken care of course, there's a trust. But the vineyard itself..." He trailed off, eyes scanning my face for the reaction he wanted. "The vineyard's mine now." I laughed at first. I thought it was grief making me miss here, but the notary's seal was real. The signatures were real, even my father's. Later, I found out how Daniel had done it, months before my father died. He'd come with papers under the guise of business restructuring. My father had signed without reading closely, trusting blood more than caution. By the time I discovered it, Daniel had already renamed the estate Haven Crest Wines. He kept the old vines, replaced the workers, and began bottling blends that photographed well but tasted thin. He called it modernization. I called it theft. I left the valley that fall. Everyone assumed it was out of shame. Maybe it was, but I didn't leave empty. I took my father's journals, weather logs, tasting notes, soil data, and years of sketches of pruning patterns. His handwriting slanted like the vines themselves. Inside one margin, he'd written, "If the roots are deep enough, you can start over anywhere." So I did. For the next 6 years, I studied viticulture, fermentation chemistry, sensory analysis. I apprenticed in a small vineyard in Oregon, learned how to read acidity, the way some people read faces, and how to listen to yeast-like language. Every night, I thought of Haven Crest, Daniel's interviews, his glossy branding, the hollow smiles of critics who praised his innovative palate. I saved every article, every photograph, every word he spoke in my father's name, and I waited until I could taste his wine and know, without doubt, that it was empty. When I finally came home, I didn't tell anyone. I rented a plot of land on the opposite ridge, rockier, smaller, but rich in potential. The soil there was stubborn and dry, the kind that punished arrogance. Perfect. I named it Rootline. No press releases. No website. Just vines, trellised by my own hands, and the same weather-worn notebook my father had carried. Each day, I worked until my palms split. Each night I wrote down everything, the temperature shifts, the mineral notes, the early buds, the way the grapes smelled like something remembering itself. And when I bottled my first vintage, just 20 cases, I didn't sell a single one. I poured them in blind tastings around town, at farmers markets, at small restaurants that couldn't afford Haven Crest labels. No one knew who I was, but they knew one thing for certain. This wine was better. By the next harvest, the whispers had begun. Critics mentioned a new, mysterious vineyard across the ridge. Daniel started losing contracts. The vines remembered. And so did I. The valley hadn't changed, not really. The same dusty roads wound between the vines, the same oak trees hunched near the highway like old men leaning in to gossip. But I had changed. 6 years of patience had turned me into something else. Someone who could wait for ripeness. Someone who knew the difference between bitterness and complexity. And I'd learned the most important lesson of all. Revenge, like wine, needs time to breathe. At first, no one knew that Rootline was mine. The bottles were plain. No crest, no embossed lettering, no trace of family branding. Just a cream label with a hand-stamped R. The sommeliers loved it. They said it tasted like memory, like something older than its years. Daniel's wines, meanwhile, had started slipping. He'd grown too confident, trusting investors more than instinct. cutting corners to meet demand. The vines were overwatered, the yields forced, the fruit bland. When his wines began souring early, he blamed his workers. When the workers left for better pay at neighboring estates, including mine, he blamed the weather. He didn't realize I was the weather. The first staff member to cross over was Matteo, his head viticulturist. I didn't poach him. He came to me after a late harvest meeting, asking questions about my yeast strain, my pruning schedule, my irrigation rhythms. He said my vineyard smelled like his childhood, earthy, unpretentious, alive. A month later, he joined Rootline. Daniel called him a traitor. I called him family. Our second harvest at Rootline was stronger. The grapes came in with thick skins and sharp acidity, perfect for long fermentation. The fermentation room was small and cool, lined with stainless steel tanks I'd saved up for one by one. When the yeast began to work, the air filled with a faint sweetness, like bread and crushed flowers. Every morning I checked the hydrometer, recorded pH, tasted the must. It was alive, not just the wine, but the intent. Every bubble felt like a heartbeat. Daniel's vineyard, meanwhile, had begun pushing new partnerships. He hosted influencer tours, posted drone footage, hired photographers to chase golden light. I didn't post anything. I didn't need to. My wine was beginning to speak for itself, in whispers that traveled faster than advertising ever could. Then the first tasting event happened. A small wine magazine hosted a blind local comparison at the old church hall, a dozen vineyards, anonymous labels, public judges. Daniel arrived in his pressed shirt and silver cufflinks, smiling for the camera. I came in quietly, in my boots and an old denim jacket. They poured the samples, numbered them 1 to 12. We all waited as the panel sniffed, sipped, noted. Number 4 made the judges pause. Number 4 had a silence around it, a focus. When they revealed the names, I felt the air shift. Number 4, Rootline Syrah. Number 7, Haven Crest Reserve. The applause wasn't loud, but it was honest. Daniel didn't clap. Afterward, one of the reporters came to me. "Your wine, it feels personal," she said, like someone trying to remember something they lost. "That's close," I said. "It's someone trying to make sure it's never forgotten again." She smiled, but there was something cautious in her eyes, as if she sensed there was more beneath the cork. There was. By winter, Rootline had contracts with 2 restaurants and a small distributor in San Francisco. My name still wasn't public, but Daniel was starting to suspect. He sent an email, short, brittle, defensive. "You could have joined me instead of trying to compete." "This isn't healthy," I didn't reply. Instead, I sent a single bottle of Rootline to his tasting room. No note. Just the label, the R, stamped in deep red. He would know. The next season, he doubled his marketing, pushed for awards, bought a new bottling machine. But his wines kept failing in the same way. Too much extraction, too little patience. He didn't understand balance. Meanwhile, my barrels slept in the dark, breathing through oak, transforming slowly. Some nights I'd sit alone in the fermentation room with only the sound of airlocks bubbling. That steady rhythm like a heartbeat through glass. This, I thought, was what inheritance really meant. Not the land, not the name, but the care. And as the new vintage deepened in color, so did my resolve. I wasn't done yet. Rootline was only beginning. And soon, the whole valley would remember who taught it to breathe. Harvest season in the valley was a kind of religion. Everyone stopped sleeping, stopped eating properly, lived on caffeine and adrenaline. The air was thick with sugar and dust, tractors rumbling like distant thunder. Every hand was busy. Every vine demanded attention. It was the one time of year when ego didn't matter, only timing did. Pick too early, and the grapes are thin. Pick too late, and rot sets in. Timing, my father used to say, is the difference between bitterness and beauty. I'd learned that lesson too well. By the time the harvest festival arrived, Rootline had become a rumor that couldn't be ignored. We didn't advertise, but our bottles kept showing up in photos, on tables, in the background of wine columns. Even Haven Crest tourists were starting to ask for us. "Do you sell root line wines here? Are you connected to them?" Daniel hated the questions. He started holding tastings the same weekend as mine, cutting prices, flooding social media with drone footage of heritage vineyards. But beneath all that shine, the cracks had deepened. His vines were sick. I knew it the moment I saw them. The yellowing leaves. The "you said next script do our comple cry." The morning of the harvest festival dawned cool and gold, the kind of light that made even decay look sacred. Root line's rose shimmered with dew. My crew moved quietly through the vines, shears clicking, baskets filling with fruit so dark it was almost blue. The air smelled of sun and shadow, the beginning of something ending. Across the ridge, I could see the chaos at Haven Crest. Trucks, photographers, too many hands. Daniel had turned harvest into spectacle. He believed that more attention meant more success. He'd forgotten that vines don't care about applause. By noon, the valley's main square filled with tables, barrels, laughter. The annual harvest festival was as much performance as tradition, a chance for every vineyard to pour, boast, and charm the critics. For the first time, Rootline was on the program. Daniel didn't expect it. His booth stood at the center, silk banners, gold-lettered signs. Mine was off to the side, beneath a simple white canopy with a handwritten sign, Rootline Wines. Small batch, family grown. No surname. No history claimed, just truth standing quiet. When the tasting began, people approached ours first out of curiosity, then out of hunger for something real. They tasted the Syrah, the Merlot, the blend we called inheritance, the same word Daniel had tried to steal. They said our wines had depth, patience, warmth, that each sip lingered like a memory you couldn't quite name. Daniel's wines, when poured next, felt empty beside them. All brightness, no body. You could see it in his face. The panic hiding behind the practiced grin. Halfway through the event, a local journalist asked to film a short interview. She'd covered Haven Crest for years. "There's a story here," she said. "Rootline's sudden rise. People say your wines carry an older soul. Where did you learn?" I looked past her to Daniel, standing in the crowd, glass in hand. "From someone who believed the vine remembers everything," I said. The words weren't planned. They just rose, like scent from fermenting grapes. Daniel froze. I saw the recognition flicker across his face. The old phrase, our father's phrase, the journalist caught it. Her eyes widened slightly. And that was all it took. By evening, Rootline had sold out. The crowd thinned. The valley lights came on one by one like a constellation rebuilding itself. Daniel approached my booth when no one was left. "You could have come to me," he said. His voice was low, tight. "We could have built something together." "You already did," I said. "You just built it on my work." He looked around, at my vines, my quiet booth, my empty bottles. "You think this fixes anything?" "No," I said. "But it remembers." He flinched at that. A week later, the local paper ran a feature. The Real Roots of Rootline, a family legacy reclaimed. The article traced everything. My studies, my return, the overlap between our vineyards. It was subtle, factual, devastating. No accusation, no lawsuit. Just truth, published and poured. Months passed. Haven Crest investors withdrew. The land went up for sale. Overworked, overspent, soulless. I bought back a small section. Not the main estate, just the western slope where my father used to test new vines. I rebuilt the old stone wall, planted young roots in the same pattern he once drew in his notebook. I named that section quietly, the Remembering Row. Now, when people visit Rootline, they see two vineyards divided by a narrow road. One overgrown, fading, the other thriving, full of patience. Sometimes tourists ask about the abandoned land across the way. I tell them it belonged to a man who forgot that wine is alive, that it carries history, grief, and hands. Then I pour them a glass of inheritance, deep and red, sunlight trapped in liquid form. They always pause after the first sip, eyes closing. "It tastes like something honest," they say. I nod. because that's all it ever needed to be. Honest. At night, when the valley goes quiet, I walk between the vines with a lantern. The leaves whisper like old letters. The earth smells warm and forgiving, and I think of my father's words again. If the roots are deep enough, you can start over anywhere. I smile, because now, finally they are.